Bryan Johnson is now prescribing medications. Hair loss, erectile dysfunction, weight loss. And I'm going to be honest, when I saw that, it didn't feel like health.
It looked like health, but something about it didn't sit right.
And that's when I started wondering, is this actually the future of longevity? Or is this the point where it starts to go too far? Because part of me looked at that and thought, what happens if something goes wrong?
That's the part that should make you pause.
Because if this is the future, are we actually fixing problems or just getting better at managing them? That's not something I'm willing to gamble on blindly. And if you've ever wondered the same thing, you're coming along with us. Here's the truth about me. I just turned 50 years old, and I really do try to take care of myself. Most weeks I train, most of the time I eat well.
Sometimes a little snacky.
That's fair and being generous. Of course, we run this YouTube channel full-time, and I have a full-time job and side hustle. Like most men my age, life gets busy. And like most men my age, my weight isn't always where I want it to be. I guess drinks creep in a little bit more than they
We've
should.
talked about that for sure.
Fair. So I'm not starting from zero, but I'm clearly not dialed in yet. I'm doing enough to feel okay, but not enough to stay that way. And the bigger thing for me is this. I don't just want to live longer. I want my body to still work when I get there. And that's why this whole thing with Bryan Johnson prescribing medication caught my attention. Because part of me looks at this and thinks, man, what if this stuff actually works? But the other part of me looks at it and goes, do I even know what I'm getting myself into here? Have you seen what this actually is? This isn't just supplements anymore. It's your entire day. It's what you eat, when you eat, how you sleep, how you train. It's like trying to rebuild your entire house while you're still living in it. And that's where this started to hit me. If this is what it takes to optimize your health, then most of us are already losing.
That's why most people don't even try.
Not because they don't care, but because we're trying to play a full-time game with part-time time. Because I look at that and I think, I don't know if I can actually do this. Not with my schedule, not with everything that I have going on. And honestly, that's where I almost checked out. All this has me thinking, why even mess with this? I'm doing okay. Like, I'm not falling apart, right? I can get through my day. I can show up. I function. Isn't that enough?
That's what most people tell themselves.
So I look at something like this, and it's not just a few changes. It is a lot of changes. And I start thinking to myself, where does this even begin to fit into a life that is a busy schedule? What do I drop? What do I give up? Because something has got to give. I'm not trying to live forever, but I really don't want to fall apart getting there. I definitely don't want to become some biohacker, and I'm not just trying to stay normal.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And if this is what it takes, then I don't know if this fits my life. So yeah, my first instinct was just don't do it. But that question didn't go away.
It usually does not.
For me, it keeps coming back to the same thing. It's not a question of does this work, but what happens if it doesn't? What happens if I take something or change something and my body doesn't respond well, or something just feels off. Because we're not just talking about just changing your eating habits or simply working out. We're talking about changing how your body functions. And that's not nothing.
And that's exactly why we're not just jumping into this. We're going to track everything, your labs, your sleep, your recovery, because if you're not tracking it, it's like driving with no dashboard.
Yeah, you're moving,
but you have no idea if something's about to break. And more importantly, if anything feels off, if anything doesn't line up, we stop. Immediately. This isn't about pushing through no matter what. This is about understanding what your body is telling you and adjusting in real time. And honestly, part of the process for us is learning what all of this actually means. How do we read your labs? How can we connect with how you're feeling? Because most of us never get taught that.
So it's not just follow a system. It's understand what's happening while I'm doing it.
Exactly.
And I guess that's where this shift started for me. Because the real question here isn't just blueprint. It's whether chasing optimization starts to pull you away from real life. So now I'm sitting here thinking, all right, if I'm going to have an opinion on what Bryan Johnson is doing, I can't just sit on the outside and criticize.
That's true.
But I'm still not convinced I can actually keep up with it. That's the truth, because if I ignore this, I'm betting that what I'm doing right now is enough. And let's be honest, it's probably not.
We can all do more. We can all do more.
And that feels like thinking everything's working just because nothing has failed yet. And I don't actually know that's true, because most people don't have the time or the margin for error to figure it out themselves. So instead of guessing, I'm going to test this and show you what's actually worth it. So here's what we're going to do. For the next 90 days, I'm going to run Bryan Johnson's blueprint inside a real life with a real schedule and see what actually happens. So if we're going to incorporate this into my life, it's definitely not something that I can do all at once. There's way too much, and honestly, that's the fastest way this whole thing falls apart. There's no way I'm going to go from a normal, busy scheduling life to living like Bryan Johnson overnight. Just not realistic.
So we're going to break it down. We start with the baseline, your blood work, sleep, recovery, and then we test the pieces, the supplements, the medications, the routines, the training, one piece at a time, and we track what actually changes.
So we're not pretending this is easy. We're trying to find out what each part actually does.
Exactly. And then once we've tested the pieces, we bring it all together.
And that's when we try to find out what this really feels like. To try to live like Bryan Johnson in real life as a 50-year-old dude with a really busy schedule and a real body, because that's the whole point. Does any of this actually change anything, or does it just sound good on paper? What we find out in the next step might change how we approach the whole thing. Because if it doesn't, then we've been putting time and effort into something that actually isn't even moving the needle.
And we're going to track everything: sleep, recovery, energy, because if this actually works,
then it changes everything. And if it doesn't, then people need to know that too. because most people don't have the time to figure this out on their own, because this isn't just about living longer. It's about whether I stay independent or slowly give up. And this is the part that I didn't expect. The more I looked into applying this into my own life, the less it felt like a health plan, and the more it felt like a second job.
Without the paycheck.
Exactly. And that's when it began to hit me. If staying healthy starts to feel like a job, how many people are actually going to stick with it long enough for it to even matter?
Nobody.
Earlier I asked, what happens if something goes wrong? What happens when your body doesn't respond the way you expect? Before I even started Blueprint, we tested something that gave us a very real answer. I put on an aging suit and I felt what happens when your body starts to break down. Your balance, your strength, your reaction time, all of it. And what surprised me the most wasn't how hard it was, it's how fast things can change. If you want to see what we're actually trying to prevent, then this is just the beginning of the experiment. Watch this video on our Agnes suit next.